Street, the wining and dining heart of the Wynyard Quarter, fish market on the right. So if the kids are starving, you can get fish and chips or fresh fish to take home.
If you're walking along on the other side of the restaurants in the North Wharf, you'll see that we have not removed all the railway tracks and crane tracks. Instead, we've just filled it in with concrete so that you don't trip and fall when you're walking along. And it's a beautiful reminder of what was here before the restaurants and the residential areas. And the nice thing about it is it actually does look nice when you look down. In the Wynyard Quarter, we do try and keep some of the artifacts of the previous industrial area to remind people of what did cover the area before we repurposed it, but always making them practical and useful at the same time.
Just ahead of us in open space you can see there is Karanga Plaza. Karanga is the Te Reo word for welcome, and it's what welcomes people into the Wynyard Quarter. You can go through there over the Dabble Bascule Bridge along to Whero Island to get to the Maritime Museum, and then continue along Quay Street to get to downtown Auckland, Queen Street, Ferry Building, Britomart, etc, etc, etc.
Over there, and if you're lucky enough you can see it in operation, and that means a yacht is coming in or going out.
And as we turn the corner into Halsey Street, on our left, the large building is the Viaduct Event Centre, and this time last year that was home to the America's Cup yacht race.
And if you want, you can go and sit on the tidal steps and jump off and cool down in the water as well. So on the right hand side, the ASB buildings. These are two of the first buildings to be built here in the Wynyard Quarter when it first started getting redeveloped. They make maximum use of natural light, and that's to reduce the carbon footprint. The two buildings are joined with an elegant suspended walkway. The Uranga Plaza on the left hand side here, this tiny little plaza, effectively joins the Viaduct Promenade to the rest of the Wynyard Quarter and the Viaduct by the Uranga Plaza.
Well, the whole concept of putting a tramway into Wynyard Quarter was the work and the brainchild of Waterfront Auckland, and they began the transformation of this area from an industrial site to Auckland's newest inner city suburb. And as other cities around the world had done, they too installed a heritage tramway here. But our tramway was supposed to run across a bridge and down to Queen's Wharf, the bottom of Queen Street, and be the link to Wynyard Quarter. But sadly that part of the tramway never got constructed, so we've always been confined to this 1.5 kilometre loop. So much of the tree planting and the development of this area was done by Waterfront Auckland. Now the council's development arm is Panuku, and they continue on the work started by Waterfront Auckland.
You may not know, but the Maritime Museum just over the bridge there, that's free for Aucklanders. You just need to take something like your library card or a bill with your address on it, our bill or something, and that's quite a nice place to go. It traces the history of Auckland Harbour and navigation into the city from the time of Maori through to container shipping.
On the right hand side we have the Tiramarama Walkway, the start of the Tiramarama Walkway. This runs all the way through to Dawley Street. It has 480,000 sandblasted little circles in there that represent the old waterfront, and along the walkway you'll find water pockets. Inside the water pockets you'll find water if there's a high tide, no water if it's a low tide. So all the pockets are affected by the tides, and if there is no water and you really want to see some water, get the young ones to jump on the big silver buttons and you'll see a lot of water come through the fountains.
On the left we have the Viaduct Basin from which the first America's Cup was sailed, and of course a nice view of Sky Tower.
It was initially named Lighter Quay for the 1940s concept of using lighters or small craft to help ferry goods from ship to shore. Now it's going to sound like a real big surprise, but Auckland's got congestion problems, and in the 1940s this applied to the port as well. So what would happen is big ships would come in to dock, and there'd be a queue that have to wait for their turn to pull in. So what would happen is while they're waiting out in the middle of the harbour, small boats would head out, take all the small items, bring them here to be further transported. Now while this concept was really popular in London, here in Auckland it was just too much double handling and it proved too expensive, so it was very quickly scrapped. Thankfully though, we got to keep the lovely basin, and you can see it just again here on our left. Until recently, the Viaduct Basin was still a working wharf, and it was only actually at the end of 2020 that the last piece of wharf was opened up to normal people access.
If you ever wanted to take a little bit of a walk around the area, a great place to start would be Viaduct Harbour Avenue, just here on the left. If you follow the shoreline around to the Maritime Museum, you'll find plaques that tell the story of the history of this area, particularly when everything hugged the shoreline. The timber companies that used to float the enormous kauri logs down from the upper harbour into what was then called Lighter Quay, and of course today we know it as the Viaduct Harbour, and the timber was floated into there where it was processed. The lighters that used to bring the freight in from the big ships, waiting to find a spot at the wharves. All of these stories are told by plaques as you wander along Viaduct Harbour Avenue. Well worth the walk.
If you have a look around Wynyard Quarter, you'll see that the roads are designed differently to most other roads. That's because it's designed as a low-speed environment with a 30km per hour speed limit being introduced back in April 2017, before the main speed limit was introduced to the city centre. So the area is to have the slow speed environment, and you can see it has no curbs as well.
Those sunken pits with vegetation in them are actually rain gardens, and they act as a sort of filtration system for stormwater runoff from the road. So the way they work is they're filled with a mixture of sand and silt, as well as some porous rock, and any water washing into them is filtered down through to make sure that whatever goes back into that ocean, as I said, or reclaimed land, is as fresh as possible.
On our right just here is Amy Dauldy Park. Amy Dauldy was a pioneering figure in the Auckland suffrage movement. She fought for justice and equality for all.
But if you have a look at the park, you can see there are 7 trees which are older than the others. So when the park was being redeveloped, the trees were taken away, and when the park was completed, the trees were brought back. So if you do walk around there, try and see which trees are older than the rest.
Up here on the right we have a most beautifully painted structure. That is a water and sewage strainer, and on it is lovely pictures of New Zealand's native birds. It's worth a walk around there. The kids might like to have a look at those. Some of our rare native birds painted up there. On the left you can see the gardens. Scott, who's with us here, has one of those gardens, and they're owned by apartment owners and restaurants. And in there are little bits of herbs that if you want to take a wee sprig you can. A little sprig of rosemary for roast lamb, or thyme for stuffing. Just a wee sprig, not the whole plant.
Here's the other end of the Tiramarama walkway. It runs straight from Halsey right through to Dauldy and then carries on through.
So right now, as we're headed up Dauldy Street on our right and left, you can see the Dauldy Street Linear Park. This is a greenway which connects Victoria Park behind us through to Silo Park ahead of us. It will eventually connect through as well to Headland Park when that opens in a few years, but of course by then the tramway will have closed and be gone for good.
And this block of land we're passing through now was once the domain of Mobile oil and carried all their oil storage tanks.
The area we're going through right now used to be known as the tank farm, named for the large number of petrochemical storage tanks that used to be found in this area. On our right just here is an artist's impression of one of those tanks. This 7.6 metre tall structure is made entirely from reclaimed, recycled materials and is designed by a local Māori artist to represent a eel trap. Just on our left here is the sibling tank to that one. This one is 7.5 metres tall and it reuses rainwater for use on the splash pad there, which on a hot sunny day is great fun for people of all ages.
Side over there we have 7 silos. Those silos are never coming down. They're going to remind us for the rest of the duration of the Wynyard Quarter here for many years to come what used to be here before all the apartment blocks and the restaurants, and that was the industrial area. Tanks and silos. The Golden Bay Cement Company used to actually operate from here as well. We of course use the one big silo to show movies when there's no COVID around. We have the movies in the park, which is a lovely little thing for a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday. We have the lovely big gantry over there. And the gantry is a wonderful spot to climb up to the top and have a look at the views of the Auckland harbour. And if you catch me on a good day, I might tell you can see the Durban harbour from there.
This was the industrial heart of Auckland. The silos give this part of Wynyard Quarter its name, Silo Park.
If any of you have seen the Auckland Harbour Bridge lights in action, the Harbour Bridge lights are powered by 2 large capacitor batteries, and those batteries are housed in this building over here. And those batteries are charged by solar panels that are on the north-facing side of the restaurant roofs in Jellicoe Street. There's 630 solar panels that charge up those batteries, and they power 90,000 LEDs and 200 floodlights, along with some speakers and other musical equipment for the Auckland Harbour Bridge. So if you ever do get to see it in action, you can tell everyone you know where the power comes from.
Well, continuing on our journey, straight ahead of us out the window, the large shed you can see was the home base for the British contingent during the America's Cup yacht race. Very soon that enormous shed will go, and Panuku are redeveloping the whole end of Wynyard Wharf to turn it into a park. It's been an enormous green space, and it's going to be called Headland Park. So if you're leaving us now, your ticket, remember, is good till 4 o'clock.
Today.
All the things.
All the things.